So, of course, when you guys look at this video to the right here, it's rage bait. How bad is Khamzat Chimaev? Somebody like me, a huge Khamzat fan, can't wait for this fight in August against DDP. It's rage baiting me. So I had to check it out. Actually, somebody in the comment section said I need to do a video on this. That was King Terzi. So I am covering the video as you requested. Well, I checked it out first. I'm like, you are absolutely right. I do need to cover this because what Josh Thomson goes on to say in this video is I just don't understand his stance on Khamzat Chimaev, and I don't know why he doesn't have more respect for him. It's really, really bizarre. It's almost like he feels as though when people put Khamzat or talk about Khamzat in a similar way as Khabib or Islam, he takes it personally, and he thinks that the dominance that Khabib and Islam exhibit is in a class of its own, is separate from Khamzat, which I actually I disagree with. I think that's part of the reason why people made those comparisons early on, and he's forgetting about that. We're going to go through piece by piece all the different things he says, and there are some points where he actually does finally give Khamzat his due credit. It kind of slips out there into what I do think is the truth when he talks about Khamzat's abilities in the first round and a half, which I've already dispelled that notion that Khamzat is amazing in the first round, nobody can beat him, and then after that he wanes and then he becomes highly vulnerable. I actually disagree with that take, and we're going to talk about that as the video goes through. But I've queued up 4 different points that I want to show in this video, in this discussion, of how bad Khamzat is, which is ridiculous. So if you guys haven't seen my myth busting video where I go through the main myths about Khamzat and debunk them one by one, you should check that out. But anyways, we're going to go through some of that same material again in this video. So we're going to start off with this clip right here that is quite triggering if you're a Khamzat fan. Here we go.
Well, let's be honest. How bad is Khamzat Chimaev? Why is everyone talking about how great he is? Let's talk about how bad is he? How bad is he? He beat Zhang Liang Li.
Just think about this for a second, by the way, right? To even start out, imagine somebody making a video about Ian Gary. How bad is Ian Gary after doing the things that he's done, come out mostly undefeated in the UFC, losing one fight, a short notice fight to Shavkat Rakhmonov, who's considered to be the toughest welterweight in the division. Imagine that. Nobody's doing that. Everybody's giving Ian Gary his props, his flowers, etc. Or even Carlos Pratas after losing to Ian Gary. Imagine making a video. How bad is he? Why would anybody do that? No, people have just been talking him up, and then they're saying he had a tough matchup against Ian Gary. And I think he still hasn't lost any, his stock hasn't gone down. But for some reason, with Khamzat Chimaev, with an undefeated record in the UFC, actually an undefeated record, period, people like Josh Thomson have to go through with a fine-tooth comb and actually flip it around to ask an idiotic question of how bad is he? Why? I don't understand. I only think it's because the amount of hype and the amount of attention he got in a short period of time, people feel the need to be like hypercritical to a level that is not shown to any other fighter. I think that in and of itself shows how actually good he is. But anyways, I digress. Let's keep listening to these points. We're going to hit them one at a time. I'm going to respond to them one by one.
Right? Dominant performance when he could make 170.
I don't know what that means, because if he's saying that, yeah, he only was able to handle him at 170 and he can't do the same thing at middleweight, if that's what he's insinuating, he's going to talk about the very quick knockout at middleweight against Gerald Meerschaert, and then obviously the super dominant performance against Robert Whittaker, but he's got an excuse for that as well, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Okay. Then he goes around, he fights Gerald Meerschaert. Good KO punch, 17 seconds, whatever it was, right?
It's like just totally, dude, as much like good KO, it's okay. And he talks later about how you have to separate him out from Islam and Khabib. I'm sorry, Islam and Khabib, I'm massive fans of both. When Khabib was in the UFC, he was my favorite fighter to watch at that time. I'm a massive Khabib fan, but when did Khabib or Islam ever get a 17-second KO? That's something special. A lot of people don't have the power, that one-shot KO power, to ever do that even once in their careers. It was a decent victory. That's wild. That's crazy to me. The fact that he has these wrestling accolades and he was able to get a flash KO like that in one-shot knockout. One-shot knockout, not a TKO, knocked out cold at middleweight when he was actually fighting at welterweight primarily. That's pretty insane. But Josh Thomson blows off like no big deal. Okay.
I understand where we're at on that fight. Gilbert Burns.
Wait, that was his very next fight, was Gilbert?
No, it went Gerald Meerschaert, Lee, and then it went Burns. Burns.
Oh, okay.
Where's I look at Burns took him to deep waters, dropped him in the third, really pushed him, And we are seeing where Gilbert Burns is now.
That's like, just listen to that for a second. This is so unfair. Talking about where Gilbert Burns is now. Now, yeah, he's gotten older. It's been years since that fight. And when I showed in the video when they fought, Gilbert Burns was ranked number 2. Okay, so what are we discrediting Justin Gaethje's victory against Tony Ferguson now because of where Tony Ferguson is now? Like, you obviously see, I just don't understand. He's just making an argument for argument's sake. This is irrelevant. Yeah, Gilbert Burns lost his last fight pretty badly to Morales or whatever. But at the time, he was one of the most dangerous guys, arguably the most dangerous guy in the welterweight division. And Khamzat beat him. Okay, he's going to talk more about this fight. Just check this out.
I know, look, we are 3 years removed. That's a long time in the fight world. That's at least 6 fights, 2, 4, 6, in 3 years removed. So we're coming up. It's almost, it's about at least 4 to 5 fights that's in there, at least for him. He's not an active fighter, though. So we got Kevin Holland, dominant performance, took a guy down who's tall, long, and lanky, took him down, submitted him pretty quickly. Get that part. Kamaru Usman, short notice, fighting up a whole weight class, former champion. You got to give Kamaru Usman a lot of credit for stepping up on short notice. A lot of guys were avoiding the Chimaev fight. Who wins the 3rd round? Kamaru Usman wins the 3rd.
That's only on 2 judges' scorecards, number 1. And number 2, Chimaev actually got a takedown and had ground control for some time. But fine, you want to give him the 3rd round, big deal. Khamzat won the fight, and he got a 10-8 in round 1. So just to put it like that and to use this to discredit Chimaev, I don't understand. On top of that, I think he was meant to fight Paulo Costa, and that was a late notice replacement, granted within like 10 days short notice. I still think Kamaru Usman was a tougher fight than Paulo Costa, but nobody would have said anything if that regular fight had gone through. It's just like there's always some weird excuse to anything that Chimaev does. Oh, by the way, Josh Thomson will mention this, but Khamzat was sick going into that fight. If you actually listen to the interviews, that's why he went out and tried to go so aggressive in the first round, because he's like, I only got 1 round to do this, and he didn't. He still won the fight. The last thing I'll say is, you want to discredit this one. I'm sure he doesn't talk this way about when Alexander Volkanovski had to move up to fight Islam the 2nd time on short notice. You're not talking. I don't see him talking this way about that fight and discrediting Islam for that victory. It is what it is. Those are the cards that Khamzat was dealt. But and Kamaru Usman was a legendary champ. At one point, people were saying he was going to be even a greater legacy potentially than GSP when he was just on his run and nobody could beat him. That is a massive win. The way that people discount that it absolutely blows my mind.
3rd round. Like, he was able to take him down. He was able to do some damage. He was able to actually make him work. So my next question is, and then he fights Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is known. He has made it very clear. I've had my teeth pushed in before. I know exactly what it was when he got to that choke. It was more of a face crank. It pushed my teeth in. I got nervous because, obviously it's my teeth. I don't know what I'm going to have to do. Like, I don't know the extent of the damage. I don't know any of those things. I just know that my teeth were pushed in. That's it.
It's as if he's describing it as if it was like a flash shot that slapped him, and then his teeth pushed in and he just like tapped and was out. If you remember, if anybody watches the fight, I talked about this in that other video that I made. It's not just about the submission and him tapping quickly because of a pre-existing injury. Yes, that is a part of history and a part of reality. I get that. There are a couple things to note about this. Number 1, leading up to that face crank, remember Khamzat shot in immediately and got him on the first shot, and he could not get away from him. They went through countless scrambles and rolls and tumbles, and Robert Whittaker was trying to get away, and he could not get away, almost got away at one point. Khamzat got back on his back. So what was most impressive to me about that was Khamzat just was relentless, and Robert Whittaker, as seasoned of a vet as he is, could not get away. Now, when he locked in that face crank, remember, Conor McGregor tapped from a face crank from Khabib as well. And we know, I'm sure, Chimaev is much more powerful, much stronger, just because he's bigger, okay? And I've seen him practice that face crank. If you look at the footage leading up to that fight, he was literally practicing that face crank. So I think he actually does have the power to finish it. That's why he was pushing so hard, even though he didn't have the choke secured under the neck. So I actually think he can normally finish it, and he does have the strength to pull that off on a normal jaw. It just so happened that Robert Whittaker's jaw was injured, and he tapped extra quick. I still think, and now this is the part that's a bit subjective, but I still think that even if he didn't have the injury, he could have finished it from that choke. That's a hot take. That might be controversial. You might disagree with that, but that's what I truly believe just based on the footage of him practicing that exact face crank.
it wasn't something that Chimaev, it was something that he did, but it wasn't something that like, oh man, he was so strong, he pushed his teeth in. No, it wasn't that. It's happened before to Robert Whitaker.
But what about the scrambles and what about all the amazing wrestling? What about the amazing shot? Like it's, you know what I mean? It's so bizarre how Josh Thomson views Khamzat this way. It's really, really weird.
So I guess I'm getting to the point of how bad is he, or is he good? Is he good? And I'm saying mediocre good. We're gonna find out when he fights DDP. But my thing is, we've seen where Gilbert Burns is at now. Kevin Holland went through more slump after he lost to him. Then he fights Kamaru Usman on.
Fine, you can talk about Kevin Holland's record all day long, but think of it's not about that. Nobody has done what he completely overwhelmed and swarmed and dominated Kevin Holland from the jump. So to just discount it as like, oh, that was whatever, and we can see where he's at now. Yo, it's not just about the fact that he beat him. You have to look at the way he beat him, the way he beat Li Jingliang. Why do you think he's so popular and so famous and so well known? Is because he steamrolls these opponents, even his early opponents that he fought back in 2020. Say what you will about what you can say the same thing. Where are they at now? Yeah. That being said, did anybody do what Khamzat did to those guys, absorbing 2 significant strikes across like 3 fights? That was unheard of. There's reasons why he has the hype. And I think even that Kevin Holland fight, regardless of Kevin Holland not being like in the top 10 or a champ in any weight class or anything like that, the way he beat him was insane. All right. Enough of this clip. Let's move on to the next clip that I have queued up here. More rage bait. Let's check this out.
Where I will give him credit, I will give Chimaev credit. I saw the video of him and Luke Rockhold. Him and Luke Rockhold on the ground together. He had a very good performance against Luke. I've trained with Luke years and years. For my Benson Henderson fight, all I had to train with really and spar with and grapple with was Luke Rockhold, because he had a fight around the same time. Around the exact same time. I think he was fighting Weidman at that time. So he was getting ready for a title fight, only using me and Dwight Grant, who was also later on in the 170, 185 pound weight class in the UFC, but was not in the UFC at the time. We were his only 2 training partners for that whole camp, coming through November, December into January for the fights. And man, he had a great performance when I watched that grappling. I know we're talking about practice, as Allen Iverson would say, but we talk about practice. It's not so a game. It comes into that feeling of he is fantastic when he is fresh.
Okay, so he's going to chime in more on this notion a little bit later, that when he's fresh, and he actually does give him some great credit. And listen to how he describes him in that first round and a half, and then but then just think like, why? So why would you characterize it if you're speaking about him even within only a round and a half? You're speaking about him this glowingly. Why would you even phrase it as how bad is Chimaev, or he's good, like mediocre good? It just feels so dishonest to slant it that way. I just really don't know where it comes from, other than he wants there to be a distinct bright line separation between Khamzat Chimaev and Islam and Khabib. And maybe because he feels like those lines are getting blurred unrightfully. So he's trying to draw a line in the sand, but I don't think a line in the sand needs to be drawn. I think Khamzat is actually at that same level, if not potentially. And again, I'm a massive Khabib and Islam fan, but I think he might even be at a higher level. I really do, just because of the way he's having all these fights and all these finishes. I do think it stands out.
He's probably the best in the world in 1.5 rounds. He's probably
I think DDP can survive.
I think especially at middleweight. At a round and a half, he's the best in the world. What is he like after the round and a half?
And I think DDP will show us.
People were like, "Oh, you're crazy. He's this. You're a Chimaev hater." I'm not a Chimaev hater. I know fighting. I see it. I'm
not a Chimaev hater. Hey, today's bad take discussion. Just how bad is Chimaev?
Right? Well, because you have to start thinking to yourself, man. Like, you gotta remember.
No, but that's the point, right? It's exactly like what. And I don't know who came up with the topic or that tagline, or again, it might be just rage bait. But that's the point. I get it. You're looking at it through an analytical lens. Fighting. I understand that, but just think about. I would say to Josh Thomson, consider how you speak about any other fighter in a situation where they're undefeated, where they have just have these crazy finishes, and then they have 2 fights that went to a decision. One of those, and then you're questioning his cardio. And one of those fights, he comes out, won the 3rd round on all the judges' scorecards. He just looked a little bit tired. Gilbert Burns looked way more tired than him, by the way. If you rewatch that fight, I just rewatched it a couple days ago. But now you're questioning, like, why are you questioning his cardio in a vacuum when both guys were totally spent? Look at DDP and Strickland at the end of the 5 rounds, where they're just throwing haymakers in their first fight, just spending everything. Yeah, they both looked extremely winded. So you're saying they have bad cardio? No, they're putting it. They're leaving nothing else out in the gas tank at the end of the fight. I'm sure Chimaev is doing a similar thing, as any fighter should or would if they have that heart and that drive and the wherewithal to do that, and just to burn the last fuel reserve. So, like, just look at how you're speaking about Chimaev compared to anybody else. I think you'll be able to see that the take is just like, it's very, very biased, and it still defies logic, unless we can explain it by the fact that you just want to have a clear distinction between him and Islam and Khabib. So you're trying to push him down a peg or 2.
You've got to remember, like, he didn't make weight for Kevin Holland. He was 11 pounds over. That's how that
false. He was 7 pounds over.
Fight happened. Kevin Holland made weight at 170.
Well, he was supposed to be fighting, wasn't he?
They made it a catch weight at 178, if I remember correctly. So I think Kevin Holland also stopped cutting weight early. Like, that's the weird part about that whole situation, because he didn't fully cut weight. So I don't know exactly when they told him, but so Kevin Holland didn't do the full weight cut. So they actually both weighed in at, that's my recollection, catch weight of 177, or I think it was 178.
Fighting Nate Diaz. He wasn't even supposed to be fighting Kevin Holland.
He wasn't supposed to be fighting Kevin Holland.
Yeah.
Kevin Holland's supposed to fight somebody else.
Okay, whatever. So he goes on about that fight and harping on that. Regardless, again, fine. Yes, they were supposed to fight somebody else. But yeah, you give him no credit for the extremely dominant way that, and Kevin Holland was trying to scramble out of the positions and he just couldn't get away. And then he got submitted so quickly, and you're just brushing that off. Like, that's still a massive deal. We don't see other fighters having an opponent come in short notice and then just steamroll him. Remember, we saw at UFC 300 against Diego Lopez. Well, Justin's boy from Extreme Couture, I'm blanking on his name, Dan Ige, comes in short notice, puts on a heck of a performance. That was 4 hours notice. And he, you know what I mean? It's like, and where people saying he didn't even, it went to a decision, if I remember correctly. And are people jumping down Diego Lopez's throat, being like, hey, we got to dismiss this win. Nobody talks like that about anybody else. But somehow Chimaev gets this weird double standard treatment. Okay, now we're going to go to the last clip where I think this is where, again, Josh Thomson talks about him being the best fighter in a round and a half.
All you guys are going to come back. If he wins in that first round and a half, you go, I see he's so good. He's this, he's that. Look, that was never the argument. He's the greatest fighter in a round and a half. The argument is, how is he after a round and a half?
Again, asked and answered. Won the third round unanimously against Gilbert Burns. Won it on one judge's scorecard against Kamaru Usman. This whole narrative about him just falling apart after round 2 is literally made up. It's only because he doesn't look as insanely terrifying and threatening as he does in round 1 or round 1.5 or something like that. So it's not like he's falling apart. I guarantee you, if it does, I actually do think he's going to get the finish in the first 2 rounds. So then Josh Thomson will continue to say this nonsense. I think push comes to shove, though. I think he can perform really, really well in rounds 4 and 5, just because of how hard he trains, how dedicated he is. And I think he's extremely, extremely mentally tough, just like DDP. So I do think if it goes into the later rounds, I think we'll be pleasantly surprised as Chimaev fans. But again, I'm at a loss for words as how Josh Thomson talks about him having this title, just how bad is Khamzat. But then you're willing to even go out and say he's the best fighter in the entire UFC, I think is what he's saying, in the first round and a half. The whole thing doesn't make sense. So I just had to call it out. It really bothered me. As you guys know at this point, what a Khamzat Chimaev fan I am, and I cannot wait for this fight. So, you know, criticize him. People can pick DDP. It's all good. I just think we should be logical a little bit, have our favorites, have our little biases, but let's not lose all sense of logic and reason along the way. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.